Salutations, young warriors, and welcome to Ronin Academy. I am your sensei, Hanbei. As you all know, my channel has become something of a meme with its constant, or not so much, barrage of introductory videos with little to no actual content. Well, as a content creator, I wish to rectify this, and therefore I introduce the first real video of the revamped Zettabytes series, The Empire of the Yuan. If you noticed the pun in the title, then you would have realized that today I'll be talking about the structure of the Yuan Dynasty. But worry not, viewers, I shall not tackle this problem in any old plebeian way. I'll do it Ronin style, with its mandatory equal shares of dramatic flair and evidentiary backing.
Hanbei, get to the point already!
Okay, Goemon, I shall. But before I continue, I want to introduce my editor, Goemon. Goemon, any words?
Yes, get started already!
Fine. So today I will be describing how the Yuan Dynasty of China can operate under similar constraints as the capitalist corporations of the 20th century. So, where do we begin? Well, as with all endeavors, we start with building a foundation. The Yuan Dynasty was a Chinese dynasty that lasted from 1271 to 1368, established by Kublai Khan, at the time leader of the Mongol Empire and a descendant of Genghis Khan. And yes, I do mean the infamous warlord and not that Mongolian place down the street. Centered around a new capital known as Dadu, now present-day Beijing, the Yuan Dynasty adopted many Chinese administration tactics, opting for strengthening the infrastructure of the nation through projects like rebuilding the Grand Canal that was an important factor in the success of internal trade. Some final important fundamentals about the Yuan Dynasty include their refusal to assimilate Chinese culture into their own, the empire's size, allow the Mongols to rapidly expand their trade potentials, becoming even more powerful and wealthy at the same time. And finally, the Chinese administration style adopted included a centralized bureaucracy, political subdivisions, and a rationalized taxation system. Enough said on the Yuan. So, what about the other part? As you should know by now, due to the onslaught of introductions here at Ronin Academy, the Zettabytes series will attempt to form a union between two radically different ideas for the sake of better understanding our world. So, if the Yuan was one, then what was the other? Well, I am glad you asked.
No one did, but continue.
Anyway, the other topic is 20th century economic theory, specifically horizontal and vertical integration.
Wait, what? Surely you must have gone off the deep end. This is too much for our first video. That you aren't even in the right centuries. I need to review the script now. You have only one phase. How are you going to do that?
Like this. So, 20th century economics. While not tied to any specific historical theories, the idea of vertical and horizontal integration primarily arises during the entrepreneurial period of the United States, spanning the transition between the 19th and 20th centuries. Monopolists like Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and J.P. Morgan became famous and at times infamous for their techniques cornering large and profitable markets. I mean, there is a reason Carnegie Hall, Rockefeller Square, and J.P. Morgan Chase Bank exist. These people are all legends, similar to Kublai Khan, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Vertical integration is applied to companies who expand by buying out the entire supply chain of the industry from the bottom up. An example of this is the Carnegie Steel Corporation. Every level of steel production you could think of was owned in some part by Andrew Carnegie. From the mines where iron ore was extracted to the ships and railroads that transported the ore and finished steel, Carnegie Steel monopolized the steel industry by building an internal supply chain, limiting interactions with suppliers of raw goods and other such expenses. The idea of vertical integration is one of self-sufficiency. In contrast, horizontal integration is where companies buy out their competitors in a specific market niche. An example of this is Standard Oil, owned by John D. Rockefeller. Instead of purchasing the whole supply chain like Carnegie did, Rockefeller focused on cornering a single part of the oil supply chain, oil refining. Rockefeller's success and extension, the success of horizontal integration, is one of singularity. If you wanted oil refined, most likely your only option was Standard Oil. So, you may be wondering how businesses around the early 20th century have anything to do with the 13th century Chinese Mongolian dynasty. I think it is time. Goemon, if you please, cue the lights, pump the music, and prepare yourself.
Nani?
If you remember on the last video, I asked everyone to guess at what my special ability was. Guesses were made, somewhere close to its modus operandi, but here it is in its fullest form. Of course, I held back during the introduction/reforge video, because, well, there has to be some meta mystery on the channel. それは時間です。Itto Hibana! Here we are, on the ethereal plane of Itto Hibana. We have the foundation. It is now time to build a Ronin-style theory. On the one hand, we have the Yuan Dynasty. On the other, 20th century economics. How do we fan the flames of this theory? The first step is to recognize how the ideas of vertical and horizontal integration can be applied to the political expansion of the Mongols via the Yuan Dynasty. As mentioned before, when Kublai Khan finished up his predecessor's work of conquering China, he assumed most of the bureaucratic infrastructure of the preceding Song Dynasty. Now, what does that seem similar to? Vertical integration, of course. While you could describe Song China as a competitor to the Mongols, there are remarkable differences in their form and execution. The Mongol Empire primarily focused on rapid expansion through conquest, with territorial administration as an afterthought. However, the Song Dynasty focused on building their lands under the strict tenets of philosophical doctrines such as Confucianism. In examples of horizontal integration like Standard Oil, many of the oil refineries taken over had their procedures modified towards the original company, but such could not be done with vertical integration, as each acquired company represented a sector of the industry different from each other and could not all be administered exactly the same. This logic provides the primary reason why the Yuan Dynasty is not an example of horizontal integration, but one of vertical integration. However, throwing some eloquent phrases of conjecture cannot prove such a bold theory. Therefore, it is time to fully utilize the power of Itto Hibana and employ factual evidence. Zhi Heng, a Neo-Confucian scholar of the 13th century. Following the Mongol conquest and unification of China, the Chinese scholarly community was thrown into disarray. After the formal conquest of China in 1279 with the Battle of Yamen, two different paths of Neo-Confucianism emerged: isolation and the purification of ideals by removing oneself from Yuan influence, or applying the principles to the new regime. Appointed by Kublai Khan, Zhi Heng opted for the latter and decided to make the best of his situation. Heng became the president of the Imperial Academy and became an eminent scholar of the court. All the while, Heng was integrating the Neo-Confucian beliefs of his predecessors into the entirety of the Yuan administration. It is through the work of scholars like Zhi Heng that the Yuan dynasty maintained such continuity with the Confucian bureaucracies of dynasties before. Now, applying this to vertical integration, Kublai's appointment of Zhiheng to the court shows the type of foresight only demonstrated by a desire to adopt the previous territorial administration instead of creating a new system. For further evidence of the similarities of the two ideas, we look no further than the economic structure of the Yuan Dynasty. In 1299, the Yuan Dynasty was recorded of having collected 1.15 billion liters of grain from taxes and levies. However, in 1393, the grain tax value was 3.1 billion liters of rice for the successive Ming Dynasty. For note, what can account for this dramatic change? Several factors can be cited, such as increased population and a rise of the agriculture sector. However, one of the most prominent is the fundamental difference between the Yuan and Ming dynasties. The Yuan value is quite close to estimates of the previous dynasty's tax amounts, while the Ming's was so much higher. The question arises, why? Fundamentally, the Yuan dynasty was a foreign state that imposed control over a non-native territory. Therefore, such an administration would be hesitant to stray from the previous norm, especially on divisive issues like taxation. Therefore, for the Yuan, the emphasis of rule was stability or continuity in order to maintain political control over a conquered region. However, the Ming dynasty arose from a native rebellion against the aging Yuan. Unlike the vertical integration of the Yuan, the horizontal integrative format of the Ming dynasty, derived from their ability to demonstrate growth and power as a native administration, allowed the Ming to permit more resilience to changes such as a grain tax increase. Esoterically, a state like the Yuan and companies who practice vertical integration must be able to accommodate their new subjects' wishes by minimizing the amount of radical reform to establish harmony. In addition, we can look at how the Yuan dynasty treats entities smaller than itself, like private companies. Under the Yuan, private economic structures, such as companies, were given independence while loosely governed by the central bureaucratic body. Now, we can relate this entire treatment to the metastructure of the Mongol Empire. The Mongols focused more on their singular goal of conquest, more than the organization of territories required, such as khanates, like the Yuan. Those khanates were given autonomy to govern themselves within the loose tenets of Mongol culture. Now, finally, Itto Hibana has been resolved. We see here a complete picture of the Yuan dynasty as a political establishment that operated in the 13th century under ideas of vertical integration. Esoterically, the Yuan dynasty acted as a subunit of the Mongol Empire, conquering China and adopting many of the previous dynasty's practices. The political adoption shows how the Yuan integrated China into their empire, using their own policies to rule through ease and maintenance of harmony. This link is further evidenced by the Yuan economic practices, where many were strikingly similar to previous Chinese dynasties, in order to reduce resistance from their subjects as a foreign power by resembling the previous status quo. The single spark of a radical connection between two widely different ideas has blossomed into a fledgling theory with the backing of historical proof. I hope that the theory created an impact in your thinking. However, feel free to debate and refute my points in the comments below. It is only one bite of an idea derived from the Zettabytes of humanity. Please look for my upcoming video within a couple of weeks, on the two biggest problems in particle physics at the moment. I leave you once again on your Musha Shugyo, or Warrior's Pilgrimage. I hope my words were able to assist you on your critical path. If so, please subscribe and press the like button below. Arigato gozaimashita, and I will see you on your way.